Hey, what's up, everybody? You are tuned in to Lauren and PJ Do Science, and here I am, your humble narrator, your humble musician in waiting. I don't know. I really don't know how to describe myself. My name is PJ, and I am here calling, texting, uh, hosting, co-hosting. I'm here. I'm broadcasting from the great state of Virginia. Uh, it's going to be a good episode today, kids. It's going to be a good episode today. And on the other side of the world in New Jersey, of course, is Dr. Lauren. Dr. Lauren, how are you today? We'll save the big feelings for the show.
I'm coming in hot. Coming in hot, Peach.
On fire. Yeah. So today's show is going to be a little bit different. We didn't have any input from Shower Guy, and we have no. I didn't play our intro because it's This is not the show we were hoping to do this week. We were hoping to talk about some jellyfish that respawns itself and cells that can be immortal and cool things. But then there is some horrible. Okay, let me preface this by this: if you haven't figured this out by now, neither me or Lauren are big fans of the current political administration in this country. But I will say, full disclosure, he has done two things that I agree with. And Lauren, I bet you'll never be able to guess those.
Wait, what?
Yep. He's done two things I agree with. The L wannabe dictator at day. Number one, in 2019, he signed into a federal law that made animal cruelty like a federal offense. So that's cool. Number two, and we have to go back to our childhood for this one, both of our childhoods, really. Tell me Trop World wasn't lit. He built Trop World. He put that theme park, a little amusement park in there. Tell me that place wasn't lit. Do you remember the amusement park at all?
No. I don't.
You don't remember the little
No.
I am old.
No, I don't. I mean, we're about the same age. I just don't think I ever. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it was in it was in Trop World, and my mother and my grandmother liked to gamble, so they would take us up to Atlantic City, and they would plop us kids down in the little amusement park. They had like a nice little roller coaster. There was a Ferris wheel. It was fun. But that's it.
Oh, I had no idea. I
Yeah,
didn't.
that's the only.
Yeah.
That's the only two good things. But on a positive note, and again, I'm straying off topic here. I did right before we got on the air, I read something awesome, which is another thing from our childhood. Do you remember in the summer what motivated you to read?
Well, I was a nerd, so I read because I liked it. I know there were like programs that were supposed to like, oh, you read a book and you get a pizza or whatever. But I was not that kid. I was the kid who was begging to be taken to the library. You don't want to ask me that question.
No, that was it though. Pizza Hut is bringing back the books for pizza program, where you get like you read a book, you get a personal pan pizza. Pizza Hut's bringing it back.
Wow.
Yeah, I just want to know, like, why is it only for kids? Like, why can't I bring that back as an adult? Like, if I read a book, I should be able to get a personal pan pizza, right?
I mean, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's some good news. But yeah, we're here to talk kind of Rage Against the Machine a little bit, because like I said, I wanted to talk about an immortal jellyfish that I heard about today. But the governmental administration, I would say he who shall not be named, but that would be an insult to Voldemort. Just giving you an idea of what I think about him. He went ahead and got rid of the entire NSF board.
Yes.
Lauren, enlighten us as to what that means, please.
First, I think it's really important to explain what NSF is and what it does, because I think a lot of people don't know that. Not even my students who are science majors have necessarily heard of NSF. So NSF stands for the National Science Foundation, and it is a government agency that provides the money for most of the scientific research that happens in the US that isn't related to human health. So there's like the National Institute of Health, the NIH, which does most of the research that's involved in things like curing diseases, developing new medicines, understanding how to fight cancer, that sort of stuff. Anything relating to human health and wellness would go through the NIH. The National Science Foundation covers pretty much everything else. It's not the only other funding agency. There's the Department of Energy, there's the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Agency, NOAA, there's NASA, of course, which we just talked about. So NASA covers everything that's space related, but NSF is kind of a catch-all agency for pretty much every type of science that's done in this country, apart from the stuff that's related to human health related research or the human body. That's generally funded by the NIH. So if you are a researcher like me and you're not independently wealthy, also like me, you are more than likely going to have to seek funding to cover the costs of your research. And when I say the cost of the research, that means literally everything that you need in order to do that research. So if you're thinking like costs associated with scientific research, you probably think, okay, so stuff like chemicals, maybe large pieces of equipment, disposable single-use stuff, glassware, lab stuff, lab equipment, right? But it also covers the salaries of every person doing that work, including the person who's running the lab in many cases. So this would include any professors who are working on it, because most of this research is done at universities. Or people who work in government labs, if it's done in a government lab, anybody who works under them, their technicians, their trainees. If you work at a university, you're using that money to cover student salary and sometimes also to cover their tuition if they're a PhD student. It covers their health benefits and your health benefits. It covers any travel that's associated with the work. Publication costs, because we have to pay to publish our papers. We don't get paid when we publish. We have to pay money for our work to be published. And you have to publish your work in order for it to be valid. Money to go to conferences, money to present that work. Literally any cost associated with doing research has to be covered by writing a grant and asking for the money to cover that work. And you have to provide a very detailed budget when you write these grant proposals, explaining what you're going to use the money for and how it's going to be spent. And every year you have to explain, if it's a multi-year grant, you have to write up a summary of what you did with the money and how that money was spent, and telling them what you accomplished. So the whole system is very, very tightly controlled. There's lots of things you're not allowed to spend the money on, under any circumstances, and you have to document everything that you spent. So you have to provide proof of what you spent all of the money on. So it's not like you can get $1 million grant and then take that money and go on a Coke bender or buy yourself a new car, right?
Yeah, I was about to say that explains why you haven't got me a jetpack after all these years.
Exactly, because all of that money is very, very tightly controlled. So I currently have a grant that I got through the National Science Foundation. I'm coming up on the end of year 2. It's a 3-year grant. And that grant is for $500,000, so about $500,000. That sounds like a huge amount of money, right? Like,
it's nothing.
It is to me.
It's nothing, though. Plus,
like
personally, it's a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody handed me a check for $500,000 tomorrow, that would be a life-changing amount of wealth, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that money actually covering for me? Well, it is covering some of my salary. So it makes it so that I get paid in the summer because as a professor, I'm on a 10-month contract. So I don't get paid in July and August unless I teach more classes or I have a grant covering my salary for those 2 months. I just don't get paid. Um, so yeah, if you're a professor or a teacher in public school, this is true for them too. Yeah, you have the summer off. You don't get paid while you're not working. So if I want to have salary during the summer, I either have to teach summer classes or I have to get a grant to pay me to do research in the summer. So it covers that. Um, it also has what's called a course release on it. So Stockton doesn't have to pay me to teach full time for one semester per year. I get one class that I don't have to teach, but I still get paid as if I'm teaching full time because I'm using the rest of that time to work with students in my lab. I use that money to pay students to work for me. A lot of my students are working class, so if they're all working class. But what I mean is that they have to work in order to pay rent and in order to live. They're not living off
Well,
their
you know what?
parents.
They're from Jersey, so
Yeah.
Bruce told us everybody in Jersey is working class.
Yeah. So they are, born in the USA. So you know, they're all working class heroes. Yeah,
Born in the USA.
exactly.
Ow, that hurts.
So they have to work during the summer, and so because of that, they unlike kids who don't have to work because their parents cover their living costs. They have to make the choice between, well, do I work for the summer so that I have a place to live or that I can cover at least some of my tuition when I come back? Because nobody can make money from a part-time job that covers college tuition anymore. That is a long gone
Couldn't even do that when we
paradigm.
were in college.
Yeah, you couldn't even do that when we were in college, let alone now. But they still have to work to like pay their bills. And so I'm able to pay them and provide them with housing during the summer so they can actually get more research experience and get more training in science and not have to make that choice between do I work or do I get more educational experiences and the experience of working in a lab and doing science. So it pays for that. It of course pays for stuff that I mentioned before, equipment that I have to buy. If I have to send things out for analysis that I can't do here, it pays for that. And a huge chunk of it just goes straight to the university for overhead costs. So the cost of paying the electric bill and paying the administrative staff and paying the lab staff, um, paying the janitors to clean the bathrooms, all of those costs are covered by a percentage of the grant. So I get a $500,000 grant, but I actually only get about $300,000 of that um, to actually spend directly, and the rest goes to the university. Then I never see it. So
Huh.
anytime you write a grant, you have to include those overhead costs, and depending on the institution that you're at, those costs can be pretty high. So what I just said was about it's like a third of the grant really goes to the university, and that's actually really low because I'm only charged overhead on salary, not on the total amount of the grant. At some places, you're charged for the total amount of the grant, an amount of overhead. So let's say it's like 70%. So if you need $1 million to do this work, you also have to write an extra $700,000 on top of that $1 million that goes to the institution you're doing the research at.
Hmm. And that's
So
kind of like,
yeah.
a lot of places do that. Like if you're a guest tattooer, you got to pay some overhead
Mhm.
usually. If you're a mechanic working in your buddy's shop, you usually have to pay some overhead. So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of in line with everything. For everybody saying, "Oh my God, that's crazy," I'm like, no, that's not really out of line for normal things like that.
No, I mean, considering the fact that, like, I'm using the lab space, right? The custodians clean this space, they have to get paid. The lab staff run the equipment and maintain it, they have to get paid. The electric bill and the water bill have to get paid. Like, all
Hmm.
of those things support my work. So it makes sense.
Yeah. And
On
it
top
kind
of
of goes
that,
back to,
oh, go
well,
ahead.
I was going to go into, while you were on that and like explaining like grants and everything, that sort of tucks into some lore behind our podcast, because that's how we got started. You were like upset about some grant being cut, and I said, "Hey, I think we need to start a podcast," and
Oh yeah,
that's how the story
we'll
began.
get to that. We will
Oh boy.
definitely get.
Okay. Okay.
So
Oh boy.
I'm just describing how the system works when it works the way it's supposed to.
Well.
um, yeah, so this is the way all federal grants essentially work, not just at NSF, but if you get money from any federal agency to do any kind of research, um, then you have to uh, budget for all of these things. And what's really crazy is that there are institutions that are called soft money institutions. So I work at a public university. My salary is covered during the 10 months that I'm under contract, so September through the end of June. I'm always covered for those 10 months because I teach, and so I'm paid to teach. Um, so I never have to worry about getting that money for those 10 months. But if you're at a soft money institution, and that includes most private institutions, so like Ivy League schools, for example, you have to cover your own salary with grants.
Ew.
Yeah, your salary is not paid by Harvard, for example. It's paid by the grants that you get to do research at Harvard. And if you fall below a certain percentage of your contracted salary because you can't cover it with grants, you're fired.
I mean, I understand. I know Harvard just they don't have the money. Like I get it.
I'm
They're a
sure
very
they're
poor school.
yes,
Yeah,
well,
I understand that. They're hurting. So I get it. They work primarily on, donations, and they don't have a very rich donor base either. So
no.
I get it. Yeah, I understand that.
But yeah, so every private school is like that. A lot of private nonprofit institutions like Woods Hole, where I did my second postdoc, is a soft money institution. So I was on a grant the entire time I was there. I was on the
Mm.
grant that was acquired by my principal investigator, so the person who was my boss who runs the lab. Um, and then actually, a lot of NASA labs are soft money, believe it or not.
Hmm.
So if you work for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, for example, which is out in Pasadena, um, it's kind of a weird situation because they're owned by Caltech, but it's a NASA lab, and NASA doesn't pay your salary. You have to write grants to NASA for your research, and if the grant is approved, your salary gets paid.
It's so insane.
It is. So you're contracted at a certain amount for your salary, but you have to ask for money to cover your salary. Yeah. And
Okay.
it's a little crazy because at any given time, a researcher is usually on multiple projects. So part of their salary will be paid by one grant, part of their salary will be paid by another, part of their salary will be paid by another. And it's not uncommon for them to be living below their stated rate of salary, like 90% of what they're supposed to be getting, right? But as long as they don't dip below a certain threshold, they still have a job.
Okay, so they're not like totally screwed if one project, if like NASA says, nah, that's not a good project.
Yeah, I mean, from talking to folks who work at these kinds of institutions, like I have a friend and collaborator who works at the JPL, for example. She says that she's been able to make it work for her and she really likes it because she ends up being on lots of different grants. And what works for her is just she has to network a lot. She has to really put herself out there and get asked to do little bits of work on a whole bunch of different grants so that her salary is always covered. But it also means that she gets to do a lot of really interesting research that way. And she likes it. I mean, it was always her dream to work at the JPL. So she's doing exactly what she wants to do. But it is really challenging
Who
because you
wouldn't?
constantly, I know, right? But you're
Right? You get to
constantly
work around
like,
rockets and blow stuff up all day. Like, it's
but
my dream.
But at the same time, you're constantly like worried about, well, what am I going to do when this grant runs out? I have to write my next grant. And
You
these
know what I'm kind of
proposals,
picturing?
what?
Like, do you remember the beginning in Pacific Rim when everybody was
Vaguely.
like lined up and they're like, "All right, this is your job," and everybody has to bid on the job,
Oh,
and if they don't,
yeah.
they're screwed. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's kind of like, and getting off topic a little bit, but sadly, I think that's kind of where we're heading with the world, with the way gig economy is taking over. It's kind of
I
gross.
mean, yeah, it is. It's kind of it's well on its way there.
Yeah.
But so on top of the fact that like you have to write a successful proposal in order to get this money and be able to do your research and get paid. And keep in mind, like even if you are at a hard money institution, let's say you're at a big public research university like Rutgers, where I did my PhD. Yes, your salary is guaranteed, but you also have to get tenure. And in order to get tenure, you have to bring in at least one really big grant in order to get approved for tenure.
Hmm.
So if you don't bring in one really big grant in that like 6 or 7 year period from the time you were hired until you go under tenure review, you also lose your job.
It's a game show.
Yeah. So even if you are at an institution that's technically hard money and your salary is guaranteed as long as you're teaching, you're still expected to bring in research money. And if you're unable to do that before you go through tenure review, you lose that job.
I mean, in a way, I kind of understand that because I mean, it's their way of saying, all right, you're good at your job, you're doing your job well, you're growing in your job, so this is how we reward you for bringing money to the university. At the second time, it's nerve-wracking as hell because
Right.
it's kind of a crapshoot of whether or not you could have like the greatest grant in the world, and if you pick the wrong board on the wrong day, then you're not you're not getting that grant.
Right. So that brings me to my next point, which is like how many of these grants actually get funded after they go through a review? Like what is the acceptance
Hmm.
rate? It's about 10%.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yikes. So you
Yeah.
could be like, all right, I have a surefire cure for cancer. I just have to prove it. And they could just be like, no.
Yeah. And for any number of reasons, right? So what happens is when you write a grant proposal, it's usually this really, really long document. So for NSF, a standard proposal length is like 15 pages. You have to tell them all of the reasons why this is an important project, all of the background information that you have that makes you believe that your project is going to be successful. You have to explain all of the methods that you're going to use, all of the things that you expect to happen, what you're going to do if it doesn't work the way you think it's going to work, and how you're going to spend all of this money that you're asking for. So, a very, very detailed budget for the period of the grant. You have to tell them everything that you have available to you in terms of equipment, everybody who's going to be working on that grant and how they're going to be paid and how much and how often they're going to be working, how much of their time is going to be devoted to this project. So it takes hours and hours and hours to craft these proposals. Then they go in front of a panel of experts. Generally, what happens is I've served on a couple NSF panels now and a couple of NASA panels too. They contact people who do not work for the government agency. These are people who are considered experts in their respective fields, and so they're asked to be on this panel to review these proposals and decide whether they seem reasonable or not. Um, and for these types of reviews, generally you get paid a stipend. If they want you to be there in person, they'll pay for your travel and stuff. So that's kind of nice because whenever you review papers, you that like if somebody sends me a manuscript that's looking to be published and they want me to review it, I do that work for free. You don't get paid to do that, but you usually get paid to review grants because the government
Hmm.
agencies have that kind of money. So I'll get paid a stipend, and I've been flown out to California a couple of times to review NASA grants, which is kind of nice.
Oh, fancy.
Now they mostly do it remotely. They don't because of COVID.
Yeah,
They're like,
I was
oh,
gonna say there's no need.
yeah, they're like, oh, they figured out, oh, we don't actually have to have all of these people together in one room. We'll just do it over Zoom. It kind of sucks.
Yeah,
Um,
you notice like how a lot of places are still crying, "Oh yeah, COVID protocols. We're still in COVID protocols," and you're just like, "No, no, you're just
so
cheap."
Yeah, exactly. It's just people figured out that you don't actually have to do this stuff in person, and so they decided to save money and just make everybody do everything online.
Okay,
So
so I had a question about like the board rejecting it because in my head I'm running over a couple things. Like they reject a grant for legitimate reasons, like, oh well, this research doesn't seem viable, or you don't have the right equipment or knowledge or
Mhm.
whatever, like legit stuff.
Like,
But do they also get kind of petty with it? Like if
oh god.
somebody on that board, could they just be like, yeah, this guy dated my sister and he was a real dick, so no.
So there's the possibility of that. So you are supposed to let the person running that panel. They usually have like someone who's like in charge of the review panel who has the final say and then reports to the funding agency what the panel independently determined, right? So we each
Mhm.
individually score it like Olympics judges. And then we get together as a panel, write up our final
Oh, and the
report.
Russians always give it a
Yep,
2. They
yep,
always do it.
every
Always.
time. So we all get
Unfair.
together, we talk about what each of us individually liked or didn't like about the proposal, the strengths, the weaknesses, and then we write up a report. If you have a personal conflict that would bias you, you're supposed to report that. But the kinds of stuff that they ask you about are like, does this person work at your institution? And if they do, you can't review the grant, even if you don't know them or never work with
Mhm.
them, because it's money coming into
Fair.
your institution. So you're not allowed to
Yeah, it's
review
fair.
grants for your own institution. Yeah, it's totally fair. If you are currently working with them or you've published anything with them in the last couple of years, you're not allowed to review their proposal, which is also totally fair.
Yeah,
So
legit.
what they consider a conflict of interest is, would you somehow personally benefit in some way by reviewing this? They don't really ask, like, do you personally think this guy is a dickhead?
Mhm.
So that's absolutely possible. And scientists can be very petty people.
Oh, they
Um,
can.
just like
They
any
sure
other
can.
group. Just like any other group, we can get very petty and very backbitey. Because we're humans, right? But the idea is to try to do it as unbiased as possible. They don't do it double blind because they want to make sure that you don't have any personal conflicts with that person. So you should know,
Mhm.
like, oh, that's somebody that I've collaborated with recently and I can't review their work fairly. Um, so it's not like a double blind review or anything. You know who the person is and what institution they're coming from. And yeah, people will be at times biased. Maybe it's somebody because you're reviewing proposals that are in your field of expertise. It could be somebody that you have an ongoing rivalry with, you know.
Right, but
Um
it sounds like there's, like, enough people there where, say you have
right.
5 people on that board, one person like, "Yeah, this guy's a dick," and the other 4 like, who cares? This proposal's amazing." So it's
Exactly,
kinda it
exactly.
doesn't sound like you're just gonna get,
Yeah, it's never
ungranted for being
just
awful.
one person, right? It's never up
Yeah.
to just one person. And it's not even up to the panel whether or not it gets funded. The panel's job is just to rate the proposal.
Hmm.
And proposals above a certain rating will be selected for funding, but the panel itself doesn't decide whether or not the person gets the money.
Oh, so it's like the Lego Ideas program where I could submit an idea to Lego Ideas and 10,000 people have to say, "Hey, this is a really cool idea." And then it
Right,
goes to Lego for them to decide like, "Yeah, we actually want to do this." Okay.
exactly.
That makes
It's
sense.
ultimately up to Lego, not the people who are saying, "Yeah, this is a cool idea," right?
Yeah.
So, um, to be blunt, since we've tried to not get too political on Maine on this podcast, but it's really impossible not to do it for this episode.
Yeah.
This political administration, this current president, has been absolutely horrible for science funding.
I just no, just stop right there. Been horrible.
Yeah, well, horrible in
He
general.
he he puts the dick in wannabe dictator.
Yes. But
Uh,
because we are as a podcast about science, we're going to try to just focus on how he's been bad for science and not all the myriad ways in which he's been bad for literally everything else, right? So we'll
Yeah.
stick to science for this one.
So
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 I
we're
think
not we're not gonna talk about the ballroom, and we're not gonna talk about
no,
how he,
or
decided to have a correspondence dinner for the first time in this ballroom with all these people here, and then somebody shows up to do bad things, and he's like, "See, guys, this is why we need a ballroom." We're not gonna talk about
talk
that.
about that.
Nope, we're not
We're
gonna
gonna
go
talk
all
about Strait of
tinfoil
Hormuz.
hat conspiracy. Yeah, no.
No, no.
No, what'd you say? I didn't hear you.
We're not going to talk about the Strait of Hormuz and how it was open until we decided to attack Iran, and now it's closed and they're charging a toll to go through it.
Yeah.
And Trump is considering that a huge win.
We're not going to talk about how he put out a tweet not too long before we started recording where he said, "I don't know why gas prices are so high." We're not going to talk about that,
I
No,
believe
no,
him.
no.
I believe he has no idea what's going on.
No, we're not going to yeah, we're going to talk about the science part because my god, we could do hours.
We could. We could.
But
But we're
we're trying to stay not political. The whole modus operandi of this podcast was to be educational and not political, but to your
not.
point, we can't dodge this. Like it has
No,
to.
we can't.
It's big. It's
We
big.
we have to be upfront because this will affect our ability to compete on the global stage as uh, as as a science producing nation, as a nation that does scientific research. And I'm not just talking about NSF now. This includes NIH, NASA, the Department of Energy. It includes all of these funding agencies that are responsible for making sure that the money to do science is there, right?
And
So
to
I'm
be clear, like
focusing on it, but yeah,
it's not just Trump that's like, cut stuff. Other presidents
yeah,
have too. So I mean, it's not just like, but
no,
he's just done the most visible stuff with it, but I have numbers going back for the last 12 years and they're just like awful.
no, it's bad. It's always been bad.
Yeah.
I think it's generally worse under Republican presidents because
Mhm.
they claim to be the party of fiscal responsibility, and somehow we always end up in a war in the Middle East and in horrible debt by the end of every Republican presidency. And yet, the answer to all of the debt is always, well, we need to cut useless spending like scientific
Science and
research
art.
somehow.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
art,
and arts and
art.
engineering and education, but
We
military
can go
spending,
on and
that's
on about the
fine.
effects on the humanities if we wanted to get into that, but that's a whole nother issue that's even
I
worse.
got a little on that. I got a little bit on that because something that near and dear happened to me. So,
Hmm.
but we'll get to that. But yeah, yeah, it's amazing how the military spending goes up, but everything useful goes down. But we
So
were to start out like we were already like in education and engineering and all these things, we were already lacking behind in the world, and this puts us in even a worse spot.
So, in terms of our quote unquote defense spending, I know it's not the Department of Defense anymore. It's the Department of War, right? They changed it
Right.
back. So it's war spending. But we spend um more on defense than the next 10 countries combined,
Hmm.
all of whom are ostensibly our allies, not
You
our
want to know the
enemies.
crazy part? Like, because I was looking on research that's been cut. One of the lines I found was DoD base, or well, Department of War basic research has been cut, and that's 11%, and applied research has been cut 16% since 2021. That's been the proposals.
Yeah.
So they're
They're
they're cutting their own research department. So
yeah,
eventually, it's going to get to the point where we don't have the intelligence technology to build the bombs.
right.
What? Like,
So yeah,
guys.
we spend $877 billion on defense, or this is as of 2023. So it's probably even more than that now. But the next 10 countries combined spend less than that. And those are China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, the UK, Germany, France, South Korea, Japan, and Ukraine.
Hmm.
All our allies. I mean, I know we have this ongoing weirdness with China, but technically we're not at war with China.
Yet.
Right. And they are the next biggest spender, and they spend about a quarter of what we spend. And everyone
It's
else,
crazy.
like a tenth, if that. Yeah. So we spend a huge amount of money on defense. And of course, if we are now actually in more debt than the gross domestic product. So the national debt is now higher than the gross domestic product for the first time in decades. I want to say, oh, I'm trying to think of the last time it was this bad. It was either the 70s or the 30s off the top of my head. I can't remember.
Hmm.
So, and they're going to say, yes, our debt is extremely high, and this is why we need to cut funding, research funding. So, what has that looked like so far this year? Because I have to put my money where my mouth is, right? I have to nut up or shut up. I can't just say that Trump is bad for science and not explain how bad it has been.
Whoa, wait, you're gonna explain and
Yes,
give facts?
I know.
I'm shocked.
Yes. So
Shock and all,
Trump,
baby. Shock and all.
Trump has been submitting budget proposals to Congress asking to massively cut research funding. Now it's up to Congress to say yes or no. This is just a suggestion on the part of the president. So in April, Trump requested that NSF's 2027 spending be reduced by 55%.
Mm-hmm.
And
$4 billion. Down to
yep,
4 billion from 8.8. Yep.
right. NASA's to fall by 23%,
Mm-hmm.
and the Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's, NOAA's, to fall by more than 27%.
All right, so some of the fallout here, right? Proposed elimination of Social Behavior and Economic Sciences Directorate.
Mm-hmm.
So basic research and early stage science there.
Yep.
NASA, they have cancellation of 40 plus science missions.
Yep.
And they also, in that 23% cut to the total agency budget, it's 47% cut to science programs.
Yes.
So yeah, that's, and NOAA, 27% budget cut. So we don't even track hurricanes anymore.
Nope.
There's no national, like the National Hurricane Center is like gone.
Yes. So the agencies that are responsible for tracking storms, um, and like these massive weather patterns, and of course anything related to climate change, they're being completely gutted or eliminated.
Well, climate
Um,
change isn't real.
exactly. Most people
Yeah.
aren't also aware that the NSF building, like the official building, was emptied out because the guy who runs, I want to say it was the Department of Transportation, wanted the building.
Mm-hmm.
So NSF doesn't have a building right now because they were literally thrown out of it. And there is no there is no head of the agency right now. The head of the agency quit and hasn't been replaced. So there's no
Right.
one managing it, and it doesn't have a building.
Like no grants are getting reviewed. None of that stuff right now.
So yeah, funding has basically slowed down to a trickle. It is at a fraction of what it normally would be at this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
So that is changing a little bit. They've started, so it's the Office of Budget Management that decides how all of the money actually goes out. So that's actually a different guy. Hang on, I'm gonna look up his name because I don't remember.
Well, while you're looking that up, I'll go back to what I said about with NOAA.
Yeah, go ahead.
And how climate change doesn't exist. The way it makes my eye twitch whenever somebody, and these people, we all have seen these people, they all strangely enough look exactly the same. When it's cold outside, they say, "See, global warming, it's not real." The way my eye wants to twitch, and I want to go like full on like autism head of steam, explaining to them why they're wrong. Oh my god.
Yeah. I actually had that discussion with
That's
my
a whole
students on
episode.
Wednesday. Yeah. And we will have an episode about global warming, but I did have a discussion about that with my students on Wednesday. Um, Suffice to say, there is no controversy among the scientific community as to whether climate change is happening or whether it is human caused. We all agree, all of us agree that is the case. There is
Yeah.
no controversy about that. The data is very sound. um, so it's the Office of Budget or Management and Budget, the OMB, and it's run by a guy named Russell Vaught, um, who uh, has basically decided that the budget is not so much like here's how much money we have to spend, but this is the absolute ceiling on how much we should spend, and we should try to keep it under that because I
Okay.
guess he sees managing the budget as like managing the budget of a household or a business and not a government, which is a completely separate thing, Russ. If you're
Hmm.
listening, Russ, you're a moron, Russ. Um, so
It's not slander if it's true.
it's not slander if it's true. Um, so the amount of money that's actually coming out of NSF right now has slowed down to a trickle, even in terms of things that were awarded and supposed to be paid out. So people already got the money awarded. So not only has the amount of money that is available to apply for being cut back and slowed down, but at the beginning of the year, when Elon Musk strolled into the White House with a pack of feral 19-year-olds with names like Big Balls and said, "Here, I want you to cut government spending," they literally used things like Chat GPT to search for research that included things in the title that sounded like DEI, so anything to do with um, equity, race, anything to do with gender, anything to do with being a woman, like the
And now I have to take brief umbrage there because are you referring to Big Balls 69 or Big Balls XX 420? Because Big Balls 69 is actually an okay guy,
see,
but
I don't know. I'm not up on the Big Balls lore. Um,
oh, fair enough. Okay.
so admittedly, I am a layman uh, when it comes to big ball. I'm not a big balls expert. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, don't even get me started on Bombaclat 52 though. Like he's just off the wall.
no, no, no. I've heard about him. Cover your drinks, ladies, if you're at a party with
Yeah,
him.
no, yeah.
Yeah,
Stay away from him.
stay away from that guy for sure. But yeah, so in addition to all of that, people who had grant money awarded had it taken away. And this was either because it was research relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion in any way, shape, or form. If it was research relating to, say, transgender issues or the sociology around being trans, or even just the sociology around gender and sex, not necessarily being transgender, but just sex and gender in general. A lot of that money was taken away. But also, I think some people are maybe kind of aware of that. A lot of people got grants taken away simply because they were at the wrong institution. So I have a colleague at Harvard who lost grant money because he's a professor at Harvard.
Hmm.
And that's it.
I mean, look, I get it. I mean, I know, you know, with NASCAR, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated hasn't been doing that great either because they used Chat GPT and looked up DEI and said, all right, their grants are pulled. So there's even racing teams being affected, and that shouldn't stand as God fearing Republicans and woo watching NASCAR and swill and bear. That shouldn't stand. I want my Dale Earnhardt.
There's nothing that I enjoy more than watching people take left turns for hours.
That's why I watch F1. They turn right.
Ooh, mixing it up a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
in any case, lots of grants were taken away. So, and this directly affected me in multiple ways. So, in case you think I'm just telling tales out of school, so last summer I was selected to be a mentor for a program that was designed to get students to get more experiences with doing research at sea. And so they had money primarily from the Navy, actually. So it's from the Office of Naval Research, because being able to do work at sea, like mapping the bottom of the ocean and taking seawater samples and tracking ocean currents and things like that is also really important to naval defense. So they were funding this, and that money got frozen. So we weren't able to do any of that work. And then there was another research cruise that I was supposed to go on that was with this colleague at Harvard. And none of this work had anything to do with DEI or trans people or gender or race equity or any of the other hot button stuff. It was purely an oceanographic research project, and it was in its third year. So they had already done the first 2 years of the work. And they were testing out this special lander that they had developed to put on the bottom of the ocean and take data. And the money got taken away because he's a Harvard professor. And they've decided that
Oh,
Harvard is this evil institution that doesn't deserve any government funds.
didn't Harvard had like a protest or something, didn't they? Is it there? I don't remember what triggered that.
There's a whole bunch of stuff going on at Harvard. So the
Yeah,
argument that's
and the
being
government
made,
was like pissed at Harvard for some stupid reason.
the argument that's being made is because there were pro-Palestine protests taking place on
That was
Harvard
it.
campus.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, these protests have been occurring all over the country. Harvard is not the only university that's had these. But the narrative that's coming out of this administration is that Harvard is an anti-Semitic institution because they tolerated these protests. That's what they're saying.
Right, because freedom of speech isn't a thing.
Right. I mean, we could argue. I don't want to get into the Israel-Palestine conflict because that is like way outside
Yeah,
of our purview. But
way too hot.
regardless of what you think about that, students have the right to protest on campus about anything.
Absolutely.
Anything. I mean, I don't particularly like when student groups put up pictures of aborted fetuses in protest of abortion, but they are constitutionally allowed to do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's anyway, the a whole bunch of grant money was taken away from researchers. Some of them ended up getting it back, but a lot of them didn't. And also, a lot of people at government agencies were fired. So the person who was managing my grant got fired, then 2 weeks later got her job back. And she must have been fired again because she's no longer listed as the program manager of my grant. And the program itself has been archived, so it's no longer accepting proposals. But I still have my grant money. They haven't taken it away. They're just not accepting any more proposals to that particular program because it was designed to get more undergraduate students involved in science, and that's DEI.
Right. So what Dr. Lauren is saying is to like and subscribe to our podcast so we can
Yes.
monetize as soon as humanly possible.
So you can help me run my lab.
There you
And
go.
hell, I would
Look,
be
we could turn
more
your
than
lab into a studio.
I would be more than happy to spend several episodes telling you all about all of the really cool research that I do in my lab, and literally all of it is done by undergraduate students. And that is a big deal. Like, most research that's done in the United States is done by graduate students and people who have PhDs but don't run their own labs. So they're called postdocs. So I had to do 2 postdoctoral appointments before I got this job. So the vast majority of research that's done in this country that advances our understanding of the world is done at universities and in government labs. And so the government labs have been completely gutted. Lots of people have been fired. Whole departments have been lost. Buildings have been bulldozed at NASA research centers, like Goddard. Just whole buildings, just totally bulldozed. Um, and entire programs have just been destroyed. And lots of people at NSF were fired. There was a lot of shuffling of people around. And all of this was supposedly done because we spend way too much money on bureaucracy. And so there
Mhm.
was this idea that if we just fire a whole bunch of government employees, then we'll save a lot of money because we don't really need all of those people working those jobs. The problem is that these people are doing a lot of heavy lifting for just making things in this country run smoothly and silently. And losing those people creates huge delays in getting government systems to work the way they're supposed to work. So not just science, but pretty much everything relies on these people being able to do their jobs. And from a DEI perspective, and this is probably one reason why they were targeted, government jobs are a really great way for people to become upwardly mobile because it's good pay and it's a steady job with benefits and it's relatively stable employment. So they removed that as an avenue for people to get steady, good paying jobs because those government jobs are just being wiped out en masse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
was thinking too, like, to kind of advance that, maybe when we switch to video, we could do a couple live shows from your lab. That would be neat.
I would be happy to give a tour of my lab.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see in July. So that program that got canceled last year got rescued by a private nonprofit institution, the Schmidt Ocean Institute, which is actually it's run by the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, and his wife Wendy Schmidt.
Hmm.
And they gave us enough money to revive the program, but at a smaller scale. So we're going to be on a smaller ship with a smaller ROV and less ship time, but we do still get to go to sea. So I will be doing that at the end of July if folks are interested in getting a tour of a small oceanographic vessel, and we'll just be in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not going to be like in the middle of the Pacific or something, but you do get to
Well,
see what
you'll need
life's
somebody to
almost.
film it.
Yeah, well,
Somebody will have to film for a podcast. So, just
I'll
saying.
follow myself around with a camera.
No.
Body double.
I won't hurt the drink package too much this time, I swear.
I mean, we are leaving out of Florida, so if you want to
Yeah,
stow
see?
away, stow away.
Right. I could
Deal.
handle it.
So this brings me to the most recent event, which is the National Science Board. So last weekend, the entire National Science Board, so 20 some people, I think it's like 24 people, got letters saying you're fired. Um, it was a letter directly from the president saying, like, you're fired, clear out your desk, thank you for your service. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, that kind of thing. Um, and what the National Science Board is supposed to do is it's a nonpartisan government agency that is supposed to oversee spending at the NSF. So it's like an extra layer of oversight on this spending. So, like, when I say that spending on research in this country is very, very tightly controlled, there's like layers upon layers upon layers of review and control of what the money gets spent on. The idea that there could be frivolous scientific research spending is kind of a joke. I mean, I think the most frivolous types of research spending are actually done by the military, if anything. Like when I was in graduate school, I got my PhD in oceanography, and like our professors told us, like, oh yeah, if you have like a really off the wall project, propose it to the Navy because they fund the weird stuff. So
I
like
mean, look, they funded the village people. So,
exactly, exactly. Any hole's the goal. Uh,
mhm.
so, but it's not as if we were pouring billions of dollars into research that wasn't amounting to anything. Like these are programs that were looking for cures for and preventative measures for life-threatening diseases. Were looking for new ways to be energy self-reliant and energy independent. Um, and we're being vastly, vastly outpaced in those regards now by China, actually. China is really like going to outstrip us at this point.
Hmm.
In terms of our place as leaders in scientific research, um, we really just shot ourselves in the foot. And the problem is that it's not as though Trump's going to leave office and we'll get a Democrat as president or whoever, and
Right.
suddenly everything's going to go back to the way it was. I think a lot of people still are kind of holding out hope for that, right? That like, oh, we just have to like sit tight, until 2028 and everything will be fine. Everything will go back to normal again.
It's going to take
And
years.
yeah, yeah. That's the problem. Um
I think one of the other problems too, kind of, I'm going to blame the media on this one because a lot of people not in the know of science and not knowing how that stuff works. You'll come across an article and I don't know, it'll be like, yeah, scientists have discovered when people fart, it smells bad, you know, and they'll be like, well, yeah, I could have told you that. My
right.
my husband and the dog do it all the time. It smells awful. I don't know why they need to do research for that. And that kind of gets into people who are way outside of that research bubble's head. So they say, oh, yeah, that is unnecessary. That's dumb. Not
Yeah.
realizing that the research actually was about like gut microbes and gut health and things like that.
Right. Right. So it's this oversimplification on the part of
Right.
science communicators who misrepresent what the research is really telling people.
Yeah.
Um and this is something that Carl Sagan saw coming like way back in, oh God, I don't know, the 70s or 80s. He noticed that we have this like science obsessed, science driven society, but most people don't have a foundational science education to be able to understand any of the information that's being thrown at
Mm.
them. And what has resulted is almost this retreat back. I mean, you see it now with like all of these like trad wives who are like, drink raw milk, don't vaccinate your children, and it's like, why are we running back to a time when the child mortality rate was like you had 10 children and 3 of them survived to adulthood? Like, why are we trying to bring that back?
Well,
What
it's
do we
it, it's
have to
because
replace?
it it's because the vaccines cause autism. Like I always say, my mother took Tylenol and got me vaccinated, and all I inherited was an encyclopedic knowledge of trains. Like,
Amen to that, brother. I mean,
no,
uh,
it's ridiculous because like this stuff has been proved over and over and over again to be effective. And to your point, like infant mortality rates gone down, human life expectancy gone up, but they just want you to, get your 35 years in, be done with it, and have 15 kids you can work on the farm. And if 6 of them drop a disease, well, you still got 9 others. Like,
I mean, there are members of the Republican Party and then these political pundits who are right leaning who are like going on record saying like the problem is that the 15 to 19-year-old girls aren't having babies anymore. It's like, why would
that's
you
not a
want?
problem. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're the same ones that want to marry them when they're 14. So, I mean,
Right.
let's not we
They
won't
want to
we
they
won't
want
go
to
into
pull
the
Jerry Lee Lewis and marry their 14-year-old cousin.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, we won't talk about Epstein Island too much on this one, but
oh, we should do a whole thing about Andrew Wakefield though and the vaccine
Oh,
situation because that
yeah.
is just a travesty. And there's a lot to be said. Like even not I think it's very, very important that at some point we talk about how vaccines actually work and
Yeah.
why that one study linking vaccines to autism was redacted and that man no longer has his medical license. Um,
Yeah, but they don't read that part.
right. Well,
Yeah. But,
I
I
can
mean, our listeners will listen to that part. But anyway, I mean, we're starting to wrap up, so we're almost at the hour mark on our show, but I don't know, do you have any other like big bombshells cuz I got a couple things to get off my chest too.
I feel like I've said everything that I need to say. What have you got on your mind?
I mean, I'm an arts and I'm the arts guy, the arts and music guy. And one thing very close to my heart, and I grew up with PBS, right? As I'm sure you probably did too, which is why we're left leaning liberal dirty hippies. Um,
Yes. Mm.
But I mean, they've gutted the arts too. It's not just science; they've completely gutted the arts too. They've cut funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Now, what does that mean? Corporation for Public Broadcasting funds over 1,500 local NPR and PBS stations. So, if you think back to when I was a kid, the big shows on PBS were Sesame Street, of course, Mister Rogers' Neighborhood. They had Where in the World Was Carmen San Diego, and it introduced me to some of the great Brits. It introduced a whole generation to a lot of some of the great Britcoms, not just myself. That's how I learned about Monty Python, Red Dwarf,
Mhm.
Doctor Who, Are
Mhm.
You Being Served?
Oh,
Yeah, all the great British shows, and that's how we kind of learned about them and expanded culture. Not to mention, sending in $100 and getting a tote bag.
yeah.
But they gutted those, and they gutted NPR, which was kind of it's NPR was a radio equivalent of PBS, but NPR would not only broadcast like world news, but they also helped fund and work with a bunch of independent radio stations who would discover new music and help you find things that weren't on the commercial radio, weren't in like the top 15 of the Billboard chart that week.
Mhm.
Um, they've gutted them because they simply I mean, yes, they were obviously left leaning, and that's why they kind of gutted them. But they also reported the news pretty factually and down the middle. Like they would use the AP to kind of get news down the center. The problem is they broadcast world news, which was often very critical of the U.S. and the current administration. So they cut all that. They cut them by $1.1 billion. And so now we're losing children's educational content. We're losing a lot of children's programming, not to mention world news, which is something that is incredibly lacking in our country. America is way behind on the knowledge of world politics as compared to the rest of the world. Like it's not even funny. I could barely tell you what's going on in Europe right now, but most
Yeah.
Europeans could tell you what's going on in America.
Yeah. Well,
And NPR and PBS helped out with that stuff, and it's damaging. It hurts like everything, and it's all getting cut in the name of wastefulness. But I don't know, to me, maybe I'm just crazy, but that stuff is just as helpful as the science funding is, because it helps people grow up to think critically. It helps people to grow up to think for themselves and formulate their own opinions from a young age, and not just kind of fall in line with what they're being told.
yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm absolutely. What I was going to say is that it's just like with the cutting of the science funding, it's ostensibly to save money, like that's the narrative, but what it really comes down to is that they want an ignorant population, right? Why was Sesame
Hmm.
Street created? Sesame Street was created to prepare inner city children for preschool and kindergarten because their
Right.
parents couldn't afford to send them to expensive daycares. So it was a way for people, working class parents, to help their children be ready to go to school by watching Sesame Street. And that's why Sesame Street takes place in an inner city neighborhood and why it had a multiracial cast, right?
And that's the beauty of public broadcasting and
Right.
like children's television works out from the beginning, because PBS and your local NPR stations, like they went out on the over the air antennas. So everybody had access to that.
Exactly. If you look at, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this. There's a video, you can find it on YouTube. It's from the 1970s, and it's Mr. Rogers going in front of Congress defending public broadcasting and asking them not to take the funding away, and he does it by explaining what his show is for and how he uses it to talk to children and teach them how to deal with difficult situations and deal with their emotions. And what I really loved about Mr. Rogers, let me get on my soapbox about Rogers for a second, because that man was a saint. He never deserved him, because I have 2 small children now and they watch a lot of children's content, right? I see the whole spectrum of children's content because of my children, and particularly like what's available on YouTube. What I loved about Mr. Rogers was that he talks to children like they're human beings, like
Mhm.
they're intelligent enough to understand what he's saying, like he respects them, he treats them like human beings with dignity. He doesn't just bombard them with a bunch of noise and color and talk to them like they're stupid. And now you have these Fox News assholes literally saying that Fred Rogers was an evil man because he told children that they're special, that they deserve love, and that no one is like them, and that he likes them just the way that they are. I mean, like, just hearing that makes me like incandescent with rage.
Yeah. No, it's true because I mean, you look at, well, that's how they grew up because nobody told them they love them and stuff like that. That's why they're so full of anger now. And
Yeah,
I mean, child psychologists have kind of pointed to that as being the thing, a catalyst of why people can be so angry later on in life.
right.
But yeah, I don't get, like, why cut something like that? It's harmless unless you don't want people to be intelligent, think critically for themselves, and have dreams and aspirations. Like,
You want
that's
them to be stupid. And
right.
like now we have Miss Rachel, who I think is like the second coming of Rogers, right? She is amazing and I love her. She's a goddamn saint. And they're calling her a terrorist because she says that children in Gaza deserve to feel safe.
Right. Like,
Because she does these like Zoom calls with kids over in Gaza and talks to them and asks, "What's your name? What do you like to do?" And like she's been helping these kids get out of there, and they're calling her a bad person for doing that. And I just
yeah,
don't.
well, it's making them more human. Like, it's
Yeah,
making this so-called
exactly.
enemy, like we've all read 1984. It's making the enemy look more human. And I
Right.
watch a lot of travel bloggers too on YouTube, and who go to all sorts of countries. And when they're in there just talking to the people, all the people are like, "Yeah, we're cool, we're normal. We hang out, we drink beer, we smoke, we play cards, we play video games, we watch soccer, we do this, that, and the other thing." And you realize that they're really just like us. And it's just these people in power who are the ones who are kind of making them out to be the enemy. But when in reality, like, I could probably go over to, even Iran and find a bunch of people that I get along with. Now, not really a fan of Sharia law. um,
Yeah.
but like, you get my point. Like, I could probably find people in almost every country in the world that I'd be like, all right, they're not a bad dude.
Right. The there's this narrative about globalism, right? Which is really just another way of saying Jews. But the idea that we should think of ourselves as citizens of the entire world and that we should have empathy for people who live outside of the United States and maybe don't have the advantages that we have, but want the same things. They love their children and they want to feel safe and they want to be able to provide for their families and experience love and go to bed at night and not worry about bombs raining down over their heads. God forbid that we see people in other countries as being as human as we are. And I think that what really comes down to all of this cutting of funding of the sciences, of the humanities, of public television, it all comes down to creating an isolated, stupid, weak population that is easy to control. And if that makes me sound like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, then so be it. But it's still true. It's still true.
No, it's right on. Like, if you look at the evidence, and if you read 1984, it's Orwell literally wrote the playbook that a lot of the world leaders, not just America, a lot of the world leaders are trying to follow that playbook. And
Yes.
you know, you cut the education, you cut the arts, you cut the sciences, and what else do we have?
Right. A
So
populace that's very easily lied to and
yeah,
satisfied with slop.
yeah,
And of course, they
and
love
it's
things like AI and ChatGPT. I mean, ChatGPT is basically the ass kissing robot that hallucinates. It tells you that everything you think is correct, and
hmm
it lies to you.
yeah, and that's the trouble with them, because that's all they do is they listen to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is like, Trump will be like, what country should I bomb today? And the chat GPT will be like, I think it's a great idea to bomb Iran, because it's Iran and you need to bomb somebody and just put a big splash in there and put your name on it. What you think is wonderful, what you think is perfectly okay, and you're doing a great job. And I want you to be the best bomber of a well, not small, but of a third world country rich in oil that you can be.
Honestly,
It's,
um,
it's
the
probably what it
man
said.
the man's sanity is hanging on by a thread. I do believe that he's fully high on his own supply. He believes all of the garbage that comes out of his mouth. So he'll sit in the
Oh,
Oval
yeah.
Office and say, auto manufacturing is coming back to the United States in record numbers, and it's all because of me. And that's not happening. It's literally not happening. It's a lie.
You know what?
It's a lie,
He's
but I do
always been
believe
like
he
that.
believes it. I think he believes
He
it.
Well, he's always been that way though, and
Yeah.
this just again just shows how much people don't pay attention in their own backyard. Like growing up in Jersey, you heard a lot about Trump all the time,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and it doesn't surprise any of us. You know, like,
no.
he acted that same way all throughout the 80s and 90s in Atlantic City, just buying up the
Mhm.
town and then like wrecking it. He
He
literally
went
wrecked Atlantic City.
He went bankrupt 3 times in the '80s alone, and all of those casinos are gone now, and he'll say, "Oh, well, I got out before it started to get bad." It's like, "Oh, really? And why did it start to get bad, Donnie,
Yeah,
bud?"
he doesn't tell you that part, but
Well,
it just left
that's what gets
destruction
me.
in his wake.
I don't know how anybody in New Jersey, and New Jersey is a blue state, but I live in a pretty red part of a blue state. Atlantic County is very Republican, unless you're, like, at the shore. Um, and I'm surrounded by these pro-Trump folks who, like, somehow think they're part of the Confederacy, even though we're in New Jersey. And or as I heard one of my favorite YouTube content creators, Little Bill, call it, South Jersey is just Alabama with a Philly accent. Um, I felt
I was
seen.
driving down there not too long ago, and I saw like a bunch of like flags and stuff for there's a Trump store. KMA Courthouse, there was a Trump store, and I'm like, what is going on here?
And I don't know how anybody from New Jersey could look at that guy and go, I remember him. I definitely want him in charge of the entire country.
Right. And you can make an argument like Atlantic City hasn't made their big comeback because they have a lot of like surrounding competition, which is true. You got casinos in Philly, you got casinos in Delaware, you got casinos in Connecticut now, New York. Like they're all surrounding the area, so the locals don't, you know, somebody from Philadelphia is probably going to go to Parks or something or Ben Salem before they drive out to Atlantic City. But
Mhm.
he kind of started that whole down like Atlantic City was gone before any of those surrounding states legalized gambling.
Oh, yeah.
And it fell on him. Like
Yeah.
they weren't even starting to make their comeback. So it's not like their comeback was stopped by this. No, they were still trying to recover from all the damage that he had done.
Definitely. I mean, he was, how he describes himself as like this real estate guy. He builds things. Yeah, he built a lot of things and he was able to do it by not paying the people who did the work and then paying them out of court in some settlement for less than what he
Mhm.
owed them. That's the kind of
Which is
person
what
that he's always been. He's always been a crook.
and parallel that to grants and this government's mindset of how grants should be taken out. It's again, they're
Exactly.
funneling to the money into the things that they think are the most important things and have no idea what is actually important.
Right. I mean, there's a reason why he does not want us to see his taxes. He doesn't want us to know how much he has ripped off this country pretty much since day one. And anything that he's doing right now, like we could go into how much money, how many millions, if not billions of dollars his family has made since he became president again on all of these different
Yeah.
grifts that he's doing with the Bibles and the guitars and the Bitcoin but you know what? We don't have to get into any of that. Suffice it to say, the guy is stripping this country for the copper wires, and he's
Yeah,
doing it on our watch. He's doing it right under our feet.
I'll kind of leave it with this with terms that he would understand. I mean, he's obsessed with weaponry. He's obsessed with the nuclear bomb. He's always saying, "Yeah, we're gonna nuclear bomb, and we got the nuke codes. We got the nuke codes." Um, we wouldn't have nukes if it wasn't for scientific research. So
No.
think of that.
And he's obsessed with that stuff because he is a deeply insecure person who wants to feel powerful. And it makes him feel powerful to think that he could, as he threatened to do recently, wipe out an entire civilization.
Yeah.
He's on a power trip.
Was it? Well, and somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but what was it? Was it George Carlin who said like there's a reason that all rockets are shaped like dicks?
It was indeed George
It
Carlin.
was Carlin, yeah.
Yeah, it
But
was.
yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it right there on a kind of humorous note. But yeah, we'll be I don't know, we'll be back next time with something with a more regular, normal, funnier episode, more educational episode, and
Yeah. We're going to be
yeah,
joined by the library punks.
Yep.
So they're going to explain to us what library science is and why it's important. So a little bit more on educational content and how knowledge is power. So I'm really excited about that episode.
And I have to write a rap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said I was going to write a rap for it, so I guess I'll have to do that. Get working on that. I was going to write a protest song for this episode, but it just didn't happen. But
Kind of
I could
a
still write
spur of
one.
the moment decision. But
Yeah.
I think if we, since neither one of us is teaching this episode, if we both want to do a song again, you can do a rap, and because I know Jay likes opera, I'll write an opera parody if you do a rap.
Well, here's where I was going with this. I was gonna like, how you had the rap songs, like all
Huh?
the rap. You know how all the rap songs have like that middle where they break it down, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm rapping about things. My rhymes are sick. My bars are fly. I'm crazy, 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 man. I'll say things that'll make you want to die. And then they like break it down in the middle. I was thinking of doing the breakdown as opera,
Ooh. Well,
right?
we could join forces on this one.
Could.
We don't have to be adversarial. We could join forces on our song.
Considering our last attempt at adversarial was kind of a bust.
Well, it would have been great if anybody voted, but
Yeah,
our
you know what? Our
come through.
well, they didn't want to hurt our feelings. That's what it
I
was. That's
guess.
what I'm going with. But
I-
but
yeah,
yeah,
maybe.
so yeah, you guys have a lot to look forward to on the next episode where we get back to the fun and mayhem. But I think this episode, it needed to be said. Because
Oh
it is a
yeah,
big deal and it is something we're both very like passionate and conscious about. And kind of every so often you need to rage against the machine, and I think we got that. But
yeah.
we'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to, as always, like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends about our show, and we will see you next time we see you.
Mm-hmm.
Say goodnight,
Or
Lauren.
hear you. Good night, Lauren.